If I told you that coaching was not about what you knew, it was who you knew. Coaching is not what you know, it's who you know. And that's why there's not a lot of black coaches around. And that's why Nebraska's never had a black coach. Now, does that statement seem to be true to you? You like that statement? Coming from me? Just some guy on YouTube? Well, we'll come back to that statement in a minute. There's a fable that you've probably heard of, or that you know about from your youth, about the blind man and the elephant. The blind man is a group of blind men who get to put their hands on an elephant, and they're asked what it is they think they're touching. And one man says, well, it's a tree trunk, because he touched the elephant's leg. Another man says it's a giant fan waving in the breeze, and because of the elephant's ear. Another guy says it's a big, thick snake touching the elephant's trunk. And each of these men has a perception of what it is they're touching. And their perceptions, what they believe to be true, in none of the cases is the actual truth. Because in reality, it's an elephant. It's not a tree. It's not a fan. It's not a snake. It's an elephant. And each one of those folks, coming from a different perspective, thinks that what they're touching is something that it is not. And round, we may go as blind men around an elephant, when in fact, this is 2022, and we have the ability to remove what blindfolds do exist to see something before us. And that very something I want to share with you in this video is what I'm calling the black elephant in the room. There are four groups of people that are Husker fans right now. There are those who believe that Mickey Joseph should be the head coach, and his skin color doesn't matter. There is a group of people who think he ought to be head coach, but his skin color will stop him from getting the job. There's a group of people who thinks that Mickey Joseph should not be the head coach, and his skin color has nothing to do with it. And there's a fourth group of people, I think the very smallest group, the tiniest fraction of people, who says Mickey Joseph should not be coach because he's black. Now, these are all different opinions, all about the same man, all about the same position, all coming from different worldviews, all with different perceptions of reality. And I find it fascinating when I talk with people who are in these different groups, of which most people, I think most of the people think he ought to be coach and his skin color doesn't matter. I think that's where most people are. But when I talk with folks, invariably, they all come at this with two opinions. One, well, what is they believe, which I've shared with you the different groups, but then they can't understand why another group would think something different. I mean, the group I'm in is the group of people that thinks he ought to be coach and his skin color is irrelevant. But I've talked with folks who think he ought to be head coach and his skin color will stop him from getting the job. It really, if you want to know the truth about it, is why our society in 2022 is so fragmented. So many people coming at the same issues with different perceptions, all of us wanting the same things, and not all of us knowing how to get there. And all of us as Husker fans want a good head coach at Nebraska. Now, I believe that that man is Mickey Joseph. I've made the case in many videos why I believe Mickey Joseph ought to be the next official head coach at Nebraska. And when I talk with people about him, I get a lot of subjective reasons why they don't think he ought to be coach. Some people. But those subjective reasons are reasons that I don't buy, I don't believe, I don't think they're accurate. The subjective reasons that many of you have for Mickey Joseph not being head coach, those reasons that you give, I promise you, and I don't know how many players will see this video, I don't know how many folks who believe like me will see this video. I don't know. But if you believe like me, if you understand where I'm coming from, I really wish we'd get some comments on this, because you're not alone. Because there are lots of people out there who believe the subjective reasons some of you give for Mickey Joseph not being coach, like he doesn't have enough experience, or he hasn't put up enough wins at Nebraska. Whatever that number, some people say he's got to win out for the rest of the year. He's got to at least be break even or better, or he's got to beat this particular team in this particular circumstance. But all these are reasons that some of you give that I promise you are seen as excuses by those who believe his skin color matters. Now, you don't have to agree with it. You don't got to think it's true. You don't got to think I'm right about it. But I'm telling you, the perception that many fans have is that if you don't hire Mickey Joseph for these subjective reasons, or even reasons you believe are objective but they believe are subjective, it's going to be, well, for no other reason than he's a black man. I don't know, was it Einstein that said that when you remove all of the variables that are impossible or untrue, what you're left with has to be true? So a lot of folks, when you remove the variables, these subjectives, what you're left with is, well, gotta be because he's black. I'm trying to lead some of you trying to get some of you to remove your blindfolds. Take them off and look around you. There are people touching something. They're touching, they don't know what the thing is exactly. They've made a judgment on something that they believe to be true that you believe the opposite of. And I'm asking some of you to take the blindfolds off and look around you at the room you're in. The room that you're in extends much larger than you know. Malachi Coleman says, the new recruit, he's at Nebraska because of Mickey Joseph. Flat out said 7 or 8 months ago, he wasn't going to be at Nebraska. Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer, A.J. Allen, go down the list of players that are at Nebraska because of Mickey Joseph. I can promise you, you don't want to hear this. Some of y'all don't want to hear this. You don't want this to be true. You don't think it's true. There are players on this team, I'm going to use language that's been used to me. I've heard this specific language. There would have been an exodus of players had Mickey Joseph not been made interim coach, and there will be an exodus of players if Mickey Joseph is not made official head coach at the end of the season. Now, what's the impact of this? Well, since I believe that Mickey Joseph is the right man for the job, the skin color doesn't matter to me, except that it could be a positive. And you have to be, to use another blind metaphor here, you have to be blind to not see the impact that Mickey Joseph has had. And you'd better believe, for those for who it is an issue, his skin color has been a positive. Hiring Mickey Joseph as the head coach will be seen as a beacon, as a lighthouse, cutting through the mist and the fog that has been surrounding this state for the last 130 years. The fog of the perception, not the fog of reality, maybe. Again, I know you don't think it. You don't think that skin color matters. But you hire Mickey Joseph, and the very thing that you say doesn't matter will be seen as a beacon for 4- and 5-star recruits all across the country who will say, Nebraska, that's where I want to go. If they'll hire Mickey Joseph, if they will do the thing that they haven't done in 130 years, what more might they do for me as a player there? I'm asking you to think about the benefits, that if there's not a negative in hiring this man, then something you don't see, let me be clear, the colorblind world you live in will be seen as a message, it will be seen as a clarion call, as a flag planted right in the middle of Lincoln, Nebraska for recruits and coaches that will change the culture of Nebraska immediately. I've heard people complain for years that, well, how come Nebraska can't get these 4- and 5-star recruits from Louisiana and Mississippi and Florida? Wait a second. Mickey Joseph will do that. He's already done that. Make that guy head coach, and the thing you say doesn't matter. The thing that you say I'm making up and it's not real. Watch what happens to this team if you put Mickey Joseph in charge. Not because he's black. He's the right man for the job, but his skin color can only be a bonus. I don't believe there's any reason not to hire Mickey Joseph. I don't. None. Objectively speaking, I think he's the right guy for the job. But if you don't hire Mickey Joseph, there's a negative that can come from that. And look, if Mickey Joseph was an ingrate, hard to work with, clearly didn't know what he was doing, had 10 years in a row of coaching at schools that sucked, had come in and tanked it immediately at Nebraska. If that's what had happened, I don't care what his skin color is, I'd say you can't hire this guy. Imagine the case where Mickey Joseph isn't hired and the exodus of players begins. Players and coaches say, I'm not going to go play at that team. I don't care who's recruiting me. Imagine that scenario. And now imagine a couple years down the road, Nebraska making a token hire, what will be seen a token hire. You know, just to prove that Nebraska wasn't racist when they didn't hire Mickey Joseph. Imagine that. That will be seen as hollow and empty and fake and phony. This is a chance Nebraska has to do something that they've never, ever done in their history. Remember earlier I talked about how it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's why there's not a lot of black coaches. I'm now going to say at this point in the video, I want you to forget everything I've said, ignore what I've said, my opinions, seriously. Those of you who think I'm just some idiot on YouTube, ignore what I've said, forget it, scratch it. This is probably all you needed to hear for some of you. I'm going to read you something. This is from June 27th, 2011. I'll put the quote on the screen as I read this. Quote, I think once you decided you want to be a college coach, you look to move to the top. I've been under a number of good head coaches and learned a lot. I never applied for head jobs because in this profession, it's not what you know, it's who you know. A lot of us want to be head coaches, but we don't have the connections up top to become a head coach. That's why I think there are so few black coaches. This was said not by just some idiot on YouTube. This wasn't me bloviating about something for which I've got no experience. This was this was said by Mickey Joseph in 2011 while coach at Langston University in Oklahoma. You can disagree with me. You can say I'm wrong, don't know what I'm talking about. I'm making up these fantasy stories about these players and coaches who have these perceptions. You can say it, you can think it, you can type in the comment sections if you want to. You can not have seen anything more, or you could have seen everything I've said and ignored what I just read and say I'm just some doofus on YouTube. You know, argue with Mickey Joseph? You're going to tell me that Mickey Joseph doesn't know what he's talking about? You know, Mickey Joseph, his perceptions and feelings don't matter? And it is for this reason that I say to you, it is time for Nebraska fans to collectively pull off of our blindfolds, stand back and realize that what we're looking at, what stands before us, is Mickey Joseph. And Mickey Joseph is the black elephant in the room. Nebraska's got a very serious choice to make that I can see no reason why they should not hire Mickey Joseph. I can only see positives when it comes to his skin color. You don't have to like it. You don't got to agree with it. And it might not be that skin color matters to you. But you know who it does matter to? Mickey Joseph. Thank you for watching. Go Big Red. And I'll see you next video.